Hello everybody, welcome. If you're watching this live, the show will begin at the appointed time in a little while. We're just going to run an interactive pre-show countdown first to give everyone a chance to arrive and settle in. Say hello to us in the live chat if you like. So if you're watching the recording of this show, best idea is to skip to the start of the show proper, which will be about 10 minutes along the timeline. Whichever way, enjoy the show. Hello everybody, if you're sitting there waiting for us, seems I'm doing the show on my own tonight. Okay, hopefully Rupert will turn up at some time during the next 10 minutes. Hang about and I'll find out where he is. You're not in the green room, nobody is. Started the show, I'm on my own. About I've just pasted the link again for you, Rupert, in case the link has changed or something like that. Hello folks. Rupert should be on his way. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Anyway, whether or not Rupert can make it in time, hello to everybody. Forgive me if I look a bit panicked. No need to panic, Mr. Manring. Okay. Yes, well, I'm a bit concerned now. I'm going to turn the interview on. Turn interview on again. There we are. Okay. Happy days, folks. Happy days. Hello there.
Wow. Oh, that was a bit scary.
Sounds like you've got a microphone or a speaker open or somewhere. I'm getting an echo now. It may be that I've got your yes, I've got you on.
Is it you?
No, I think I have you still open on Skype. That was the thing.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, it might be me. Yeah.
Yes, I think it is. It's a good job we do these countdowns, isn't it? So that we've got time to sort everything out.
What a panic. I'm now worried that you're not seeing Anthony.
Oh, I am seeing Anthony. Anthony, I think, can hear me. So nod up and down and wave if you can hear me, Anthony. Yeah, excellent, he can. So
okay.
We're all good. We're all set.
That was
still got
Was Anthony in earlier on, or is he just coming?
No, he got the same message. He got the host waiting for host.
Right.
The trick was to turn off. Yeah, exactly that. The trick was to turn off the interview mode and turn it on again. Okay. With less of the technical details. Hello, Hyper. Hello, Ben. Hello, Kipple. Hello, Alison. Hello, Nigel. Hello, Brent. Hello, Ian. Hello, Janet. Hello, Ian again. Hello, Green Dragon Reprised. Excellent. Warrior Steve. Nigel again. Spike. Wayne. Brent.
It's nice to see you.
What a tremendous bunch we have already. Excellent. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your patience while we... While we panic.
Dear. That's actually never happened before.
No, it hasn't. It really hasn't. So that's a strange glitch. Let's hope it never happens again. Because
indeed,
I need something calming now. Cheers.
Yes. Cheers.
I mean, I don't have a plan B, really. You know, what if Rupert doesn't turn up? What if no other guest doesn't turn up? What am I going to do?
Yeah. Show Standing with Stones. Here's what we made earlier.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Hi
Hello,
there,
Blob.
Chipper Chap. Anybody there that hasn't been with us before, please do let us know who you are, where you are. We've still got 3.5 minutes to go before proper kick-off. I wonder if I'll remember what to say when the clock counts down.
Yes, hello Amber, nice to see you.
Yeah. Oh, it's good to see Mythical Ireland in the chat. He's in the groom.
Hi, Bump. I haven't seen you for a while, or I haven't noticed you in the chat for a while. Nice to see you too.
Let's speak.
Check. We must talk. We're going to be June. We're not here a lot of the time, so yes, we must have a chat about that.
Yeah.
Nigel, pull the plug. Yes. Well, nearly. Hello, David.
Is everybody, just so I can check this because I can, is everybody hearing Rupert okay? He's a bit low in volume for me, but...
Am I? Hold on a second.
Well, you're not anymore, you just shout...
Well, I'm...
that's a thumbs up to Anthony in the green room. He's got his expensive whiskey, I hope.
Yeah, well, you get the thumbs up from Jacek for a solo, so maybe you don't have to worry too much.
Yeah. All right, cool.
Well, Jez, where are you, Jez? Unless you really are in Wembley. Okay.
By the way, folks, I guess a lot of our friends here are Patreon friends, so they may have already seen me sort of share stuff from Sardinia or heard a report from Sardinia. Forgive me if we kind of repeat ourselves, because I expect there's quite a few people in the room didn't know about that, and I think there's a few pics worth sharing. What do you think, Rupert, in the early part of the show? Actually, it'd be great to get Anthony in to have a look at those pics.
Definitely
talk.
Pics worth sharing.
Just a little bit.
Not irrelevant anyway, because despite the fact that it was a theoretical holiday for you, that it's relevant for there's people in the chat here, and no doubt other people who'll be watching this evening who they might have contributed funds to Göbekli Tepe to Stonehenge, so they might as well see one of the places we're going to see.
True, yeah, absolutely. Okay, the level's okay. See, I'm not had me normal space of time to sort things out and do all me techie stuff and stuff, so calm down.
Nice. Cheers. You're in a good part of the world.
Oh, Newcastle. Oh, yeah. Okay, 30 seconds, and we'll be in. Good luck, everybody, I have to say. Let's keep our fingers crossed for the rest of the show. Yeah. Anything else you need to say, Rupert, before? What?
No, it's just Jez is saying, show us your neurology.
No problem. You asked for it.
Yes.
Hey up, here we go. Hello everybody, welcome to the show, welcome to the Prehistory Guys Unplugged, relaxed.
Yes.
I say relaxed, I'm a bit tense now after the technical glitch at the beginning there. Yeah, a sort of relaxed trawl through latest and greatest news and stuff from the web that Rupert really, he did all the trawling this time around and most times around. Anyway, I hope you're all well out there. As ever, Michael here and
Rupert here.
Yes. Fuzzy Rupert there.
Yes, we're I'm sorry. It's what can you do? Bandwidth. Never mind. Do you know what? The soft focus me is probably an improvement anyway. I have to ask you. I'm sure that most of the people will have been watching the lead-in anyway, but I have to ask you: how long were you panicking live before we actually?
Oh, a good 5 minutes.
Sorted the problem out. That is a panic because I was sitting here with you, not in the studio, thinking, "What's going on?" I was almost contemplating messaging Sharon, say, "Is everything all right? Has he had a heart attack?"
No, he was having a heart attack. Yes. Anyway, thank you, Fuzzy Rupert. I'm happy to say our very special guest, Anthony Murphy, is waiting in the green room patiently. We shall be bringing him on very soon. As I say, how many we got? 80 out there watching. And I'm sure that's going to improve. And thank you, folks who are there early and ready and waiting. So, what first have we? Let's just get a quick run through. Of where we're going. We're going all over the place tonight. Well, that's not unusual, but strangely, there's not actually anything in England or Scotland. There's nothing in Britain or even from Ireland in our compilation tonight.
Tonight, no, there isn't.
Yeah. Going to Georgia, going to Puerto Rico. We're going to Egypt twice.
Yes, twice.
Where else?
Yeah. Israel.
Good. Yeah. So there's loads of stuff, that's fresh to us and unraveling all sorts of bits of detail that we wouldn't normally come across. So we hope, that we find that these little liftings of the edge of the carpet as interesting as you do as we go through. A little bit of housekeeping.
Paris,
yes.
Sorry.
By another name. A little bit of housekeeping before. Well, call it housekeeping. Sort of navel gazing as far as what we prehistory guys are up to and what to expect over the next coming weeks and months. I'm really happy to say, I don't know which way to tell this story, really. We had been planning to be on Anglesey and at Brinkethry in June at the solstice. For whatever reason, I think I'll hand it over to you, perhaps, Rupert, to say it's not looking a feasible thing. There is an upside to this, but carry on.
Well, I wasn't going to publicly yet because we're not 100% certain. But it's looking like, seeing as you said it, I need an operation, and it's looking like the window for my operation might actually come at a point where it just makes June not the most sensible time to be travelling. But well, we shall tell you more about that anon. It's nothing serious, don't worry. No, just mechanics.
Gets in the way. So we're disappointed about that because we had been hoping to hook up with James Dilley, of course, who's going to be there, and archaeologist Fionn Reynolds that we hadn't met before, but we've communicated with about the fossilized tree trunk in the chamber at Brinkethley.
Yes. Well, I've said it before. I've been looking forward to meeting Fionn for years now. So long overdue. But hey, we'll see what happens.
The upside of it was that, though, that having opened up a space, I suddenly started thinking of what we could do. And Ryanair, who fly from England into France and all over, the Irish line, have opened up their route again for the season directly to Carcassonne. And it's so dirt cheap, I thought, I'm going to fly down to Carcassonne. I'm going to fly down so Rupert and I can spend a week together actually working on Göbekli Tepe to Stonehenge. I'll say more about the project. You probably already know about our project, Göbekli Tepe to Stonehenge. It's going to be enormous. I'll say a bit more about that later on. But really to kickstart the actual writing of it and get the shape on what we can do, and also provide opportunity to feed back to you, what way that story's going, as so many of you have contributed to the making of that. I'm sure you'd be glad to know that we're going to be in the same place at the same time, working very hard on this very thing. Exciting time. So I'm flying down at the end of next week to spend a week.
I am picking him up from the airport on Saturday.
Yeah. So
not this coming Saturday. Yeah.
I mean, aside from working on Göbekli Tepe to Stonehenge, we should be able to get some content together, film ourselves together when we're actually in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, we can do that. We can go out and see a megalith or two when the sun is shining. In fact, on this very subject, I'm just going to answer. Griffin has commented there. I was wondering if the research at Göbekli Tepe was affected by the huge quake. Do you know what? There's a mixture of things there because we were talking to, we stay in contact with Lee Clare, our archaeologist friend on the ground there. And Lee, it was extraordinary that when you think of all the sites that there are, all these modern tower blocks and houses falling to the ground, but the prehistoric sites, Göbekli Tepe in particular, nothing. They might have wobbled a bit, but nothing fell down. Yeah. So that was all looking good. But what happened subsequently was in March, after the earthquakes, in March they had massive flooding. And that's caused more problems for some people, particularly in Sanyofa. So we'll be talking to Lee next week anyway to coordinate stuff. I mean, it's still, it will have an impact in one way or another, even if it's just in terms of our travelling, but it's not going to stop us filming. So, but we'll let you know.
Lee said there was a little bit of a question mark over the dig this season, though, as a result of
over the dig. Yes, and in fact, there was a big conference in September that we would have been going to if we hadn't already been committed to our trip in Ireland. So we're going to be in Ireland in September. So there was this big international conference at Göbekli Tepe, and that's been cancelled. Cancelled. It's been postponed until 2024. Excuse me, 2024. So it's certainly there has been significant disruption in a number of areas. So we'll let you know what we find out anyway. So as I said, we're talking with Lee next week, so we'll be able to tell you on the next show anyway what's been happening there.
I can't really think of anything else that's of particular interest before we kick off the show proper, Rupert. Without boring people too much. I can't think of anything else that's really pertinent at the moment that we need to include right now.
No.
And I propose that without further ado, we introduce our friend Anthony, get him out of the green room and into the show. You'll have to forgive. Folks, because oh Lord, my buttons are not working. There he is. Yes, Anthony, dear friend, familiar to many of you, sure, but if you don't, or you need reminding of any sort, here's a nice photograph of him outside his, in the front of his house, just near Drogheda there in the in the north of Ireland. And the thing is with Anthony, where to begin, because the problem with introducing Anthony is quite a lot of people you find you'll have to struggle to, pack the CV in to make them sound really interesting. The trouble with Anthony is trying to find the stuff to leave out so that you're not spending an hour introducing him and then just talking to him for five hours. But I have to go there. Very quickly. Let me just... Author of 9 books about ancient Ireland, non-fiction and fiction. Discoverer of Dronehenge, a late Neolithic henge near Newgrange. Scriptwriter and narrator for the Lviv Festival of Light, Drogheda 2022. Storyteller for Drogheda, or DRAWDA, Urban Art Festival, Mythological Murals. Discoverer of several ancient dugout boats on the River Boyne. Contributor to TV programmes of National Geographic, History Channel, Discovery Science, Channel 4, BBC. Found 300 previously unrecorded monuments using Google Earth and Apple Maps. 138,000 followers on social media. He's just showing off now. Married 5 children. How many dogs? I don't know. And get this, I've just got to finish off. In addition to being a writer and a photographer, Anthony plays principal euphonium with the Drogheda Brass Band, the most successful brass band on the planet. So I'm just assigning him a place so he doesn't disappear. He's a conductor of Drogheda Youth Brass Band. He is a licensed ham radio amateur with call sign EI2KC and is proficient at sending and receiving Morse code. I think we've still got enough. I know.
I didn't know that. That's impressive. I didn't know the Morse code, Anthony.
There he is. How do you find the time?
Laughing.
It's nice to see you, old fruit. How you doing?
Yeah,
I'm doing great. Thanks for the introduction.
Yeah, I'm not doing it again ever.
Good.
No, welcome to the show, Anthony, and thanks for being our guest again. Great picture too. You're well geared up with the internet there. I see. Excellent. It's better than some.
You guys have the bandwidth. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, never mind. Let's not go there. What are you up to at the moment? I mean, how many things have you discovered last week? How many books have you written?
At the moment, I'm writing a book. I've 110,000 words written. It's an exploration of myth, mostly. So there's not so much archaeology in it. It's a companion volume to Return to Segish, which is a book I published a couple of years back.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm trying to get that finished. I've been doing that, writing that now for a year and a half or so. Oh, there it is. Return to Segish, look.
Excellent.
All good stuff.
Yeah. So, anything else going on? What's is that taking up all your time at the moment, or you're a man with several irons in the fire at a time, as I seem to think.
Yeah, that and all the Mythical Ireland activity and the weekly live streams and running. I'm trying to write as much material for the blog and as possible, which is difficult because I also work full time. But it is what it is.
But it all pays off. I mean, 138,000 followers on what have you. And you're still doing the Irish Myth live shows?
Yeah, Mondays at 8 p.m. Yeah, every week.
Wow.
Without
Wow.
fail, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. 223 episodes so far.
Oh, okay. And
Right.
you've still got time to walk the dogs.
And sleep.
And good on you.
Great fun.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing you in September. That's for sure.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got a quorum for a group. I think that we're taking all round Ireland, and yeah, we'll be seeing you then. Listen, I threatened earlier that I was going to show some pics from Sardinia. Actually, I was Sharon and I took a holiday last week. We only got back on Saturday.
It was last week. It seems years ago.
It does already. It's funny that with holidays. But we managed to choose Sardinia as a place to go, half because it was a reasonably priced holiday to have, very economical, but half because I had a sneaking suspicion there was quite a lot of prehistory there. So, worked out quite well. And it turns out, of course, it does, and quite a lot that needs going into, and we'll probably do a special about it at some point coming up soon. The Newgrange civilization we're talking about. Lots to talk about there. I'll just use this as an aid memoir, though. I'm just going to go in with a couple of photographs here. Newgrange civilization, named, of course, for the Newgrange, these towers built between about 1600 BC, 800 BC, something like that in those times. This crazy thing was just barely 2 miles, about 3 kilometers from where we were staying. And the thing is, they're so ubiquitous all over the island. Apparently, there were about 10,000 built, and there's 8,000 sort of extant in the landscape still there, in various forms of ruin and decay. This one's I'd say about half there, because it would be probably 2 or 3 times higher than that when it was full. But there's a scale trick in here, because those boulders are quite large. It makes that tower base here look quite small. In actual fact, that entrance archway, you could a man on a horse could easily go through there, which you begin to wonder if that ever happened. I don't know if they had horses on Sardinia. So, what can I say? And inside, let's get that. There's my wife being amazed at the inside. Got these extraordinary niches, which are quite tall. 3 niches on, don't know if they're on the cardinal points, but equally spaced around the inside. And the third, the fourth area, sort of where you come in. And then a huge staircase going up inside as well. I'll just whiz through these. I don't want to get too bogged down. I just want to thrill you with the stuff that is on Sardinia. Round the back of that very same Newgrange, on the hillock, the rock, I should say, that it's built, right round the back here, is this rock-cut tomb, which probably dates from the Neolithic, but was used all through. There's a little bit more of a close-up. And then just round the corner, in the field opposite, 2 magnificent menhirs who happen to be facing... No, not that one. Who happen to be facing, see those 2 stones in the foreground, one of the Tomba di Giganti, just up the hill. And this is all within 3 kilometres of where we were staying. We did go a bit further afield and visit this Tomba di Giganti, the Tomba di Giganti Thomas, I do believe. which, although looking very much like the facade of a long barrow, they actually date to belong in the Newragic era, after, we're talking about Bronze Age here, not Neolithic. There are many differences when you get into it between the Tombi di Giganti and a long barrow, but we'll get into that some other time. Right. Anything comes up there?
Nigel did just ask the question.
Yeah.
Are those niches about the same height as the entrance arch?
Yes, they are, Nigel, and it's one of those things that sends your brain off in all sorts of directions, trying to work out what the practicality of them are. Just before we came on, I was thinking about, well, is it about the niche? Maybe it's about economy of using stone, and they're so skilled that the arches actually are a result of trying to minimize and maximize the floor space, but minimize the amount of stone that you're using, because those walls are extremely thick, and it probably would be overkill to actually use anyway. All to fill out those niches. I don't know.
Apparently, there's no consensus as to what they were used for.
No,
they're not tombs.
No. No, and they're not just the towers either. They are usually surrounded by other towers close by, adjacent, dwelling circles, habitation of one sort or another. Grain silos. So in some instances they're quite large settlements surrounding this, and while they're not definite to look at because they're ramparted as well, you can only think of them in terms of being defensive. But the fact that there's so many of them, you think, well, what on earth was going on? Because the Newragic culture was, in terms of the Mediterranean and its immediate area, was quite a powerful thing, and lots of influence in the area. So you wonder how these sort of disparate places were not warring with each other, we hope, and they were coming together, or there was kind of national identity. They were conscious of their own culture and all the rest of it, and keen to protect it, and keen to trade and spread it as well. So, I don't know.
Sardinia is fascinating because it's the only place, isn't it, in Europe where there's still a significant pocket of descendants from the original Neolithic farming population.
That's correct, yeah.
So that they're genetically diverse to, for instance, the modern population of Ireland and Britain.
Yeah.
Because we were largely Beaker descendants.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Mm-hmm. Did you meet any of the locals? Did you get pictures of them? And say,
no, I didn't. I didn't. Next time.
Well, the thing is, like a Neolithic farmer till I get a picture.
Absolutely. I mean, Sardinia must factor into one of the episodes when we produce Göbekli Tepe to Stonehenge, because Sardinia is so important, and that factor that in the current population you've got a representation, at least genetically, going right back to the Neolithic. And there's plenty of Neolithic stuff. There are named Neolithic cultures as well before we get to the Newragic. So, cool stuff. Further investigation. We intend to do a special about it at some point during the coming weeks and months. So, watch out for that.
Indeed. I think it's really interesting when you look at any of these places where actually nothing is really known for sure. So how tall were they? In the same way that you can say, how tall was a broch in Scotland? You have a rough idea of some, and it actually reminds me of the El Argal culture in southern Spain, where we know that was a completely oppressive regime, and I look at a tower like that, and that's not got enough space in it to live, and I think, well, is that a watchtower? Guards on the top to make sure that people are behaving down underneath or something.
Yeah.
You never know.
I suspect that the second floor had more floor space and was probably habitable. That lower floor was probably a space for resource of some sort, for storage or domestic storage.
Park your horse.
Yeah. Yes. There you go. A little stables with the niches around. I think that's perfect. Yeah.
Indeed.
Anyway, Sardinia. I was knocked out by Sardinia, just to wrap up around there. Fantastic island. It's a large island. It takes a while to get from one end to the other, I tell you. Otherwise, I'd have covered more sites, but getting around, because it's so mountainous, and there's not a lot of plateau area or plains area round about the coast, etc. The coastal roads are few and far between as well. But for a holiday, if you speak Italian, that helps as well. It's all good, so shall we? Have you got anything more to say, Rupert, or shall we move?
No, move on.
Okay, all right.
Let's start proceedings. Yes.
Right, let's get to our first item from out there. So let me say that all these are web articles. I haven't written them. These are viewed in Safari Viewer, which is why there are no ads showing or anything like that. So clever trick. Very glad of it. Anyway, the first thing, where are we? In Georgia, in the US. If the US could be getting a new national park, here's why. If Ocmulgee Mounds becomes a national park, it'll be the first in Georgia and the first co-managed by a tribe that was once forcibly removed from the land. Set between the rolling hills of northern Georgia and the flat plains of southern Georgia, is a park with more than 17,000 years of continuous human history. The dirt and clay earthen mounds found in Macon, Georgia, were once part of a capital-like city for what is now the Muskogee. Sorry, I must pronounce that correctly. I think that's correct. Yeah, Muskogee Creek Nation. Carbon dating of archaeological artifacts shows that the site predates Göbekli Tepe, a Neolithic archaeological site in Turkey, by some 5,000 years. The Tower of Jericho by 9,000 years, Stonehenge by 12,000 years, and Persepolis by 14,500 years. Currently known as Ocmulgee Mounds National Historical Park. The 2,000-acre area will likely be upgraded this year to become the United States' 64th and newest national park, which is great news for the Ocmulgee and the Muskogee Creek people. Have you got an insight on this, Rupert, that you can see what's going on here?
Only in as much as what was so nice about this piece, apart from the fact that we don't tend to hear that much about serious archaeological workings going on in the States. Obviously we know that there's a ton of stuff going on, but nothing really goes back, or very little goes back that far. And for them to have found a site that was actually in consistent usage for a long period of time is for me, it's just a huge thing to come out of American archaeology, and particularly when they can take this back 17,000 years. That in itself is phenomenal, because whilst over the last 5 years, the dates have nudged back for people, cultures anyway in America. The years have been nudged back and back and back, but it's been scant, and it's not been anything. There's been cave dwellings. There's been camps found and things like that. There's nothing of this age that I'm aware of that is in any way comparable. And particularly, to be honest, the thing that flagged up for me when I was just scanning through news on this particular day, whenever it came out, was look at that mound. we've seen so many of the mounds in America where they do just look like mounds, but where they've actually reconstructed this, well, hold on, that looks familiar.
Yeah. Well, except that the mounds themselves are relatively recent.
And if you look at
they
things
are
like, I mean,
they
there's
are
a lot of
common
mounds in
era.
Pennsylvania and Mississippi as well, I think. It's but as a site overall, it's very significant, and I'll be really interested to see what else comes out of this. Particularly, what's the visitor centre going to be like if they do
That's
make
right.
this into a national park?
Yeah.
It should be a pretty impressive thing. Did you get
I-
anything off that,
I
Anthony?
don't. Well, I don't think that is the largest mound actually by any means.
No.
In the whole area. Obviously, you need to do more stuff on that. But this whole thing is a sharp dig in the ribs to us because us and American archaeology, we're not that familiar. So I'm really really glad to be able to show this and just knock it into people's heads that the US of A has great archaeology and archaeology that really dives deep back into the past. 17,000 years. It says I think that's slightly disputed on some sites. Some say 12,000 years, but it's still
there's always going to be people disputing it in the same way that,
well, I don't know if it's down to archaeology, whether it's more recently been updated as far as dating is concerned. Somebody's been looking at the artifacts or not. But what
I'm
you've got
just thinking about that time, and at that time, for instance, here in Ireland, most of the island of Ireland was under thick ice.
Yes.
So, in comparison with Britain, we have very little evidence of Paleolithic activity here. And of course, the usual caveat applies: absence of evidence does not imply evidence of absence. But those figures are quite astonishing. The one thing that I couldn't get from the article was, the picture looks like it's a mound with a passage leading into it. Are they like passage mounds?
Really good question. I haven't been able to discern that from this article.
That's something we haven't been able to get. Yeah.
But you say some of those are late, as in Common Era, as in
oh
past
yeah,
millennia.
The mounds themselves are, but the mounds are massive, big. I mean, there's one said to be 55 foot high, and it's quite flat on the top. It's not conical like that one seems to. Like that one seems to be. There's one massive one that's high and it's got a flat top to it. So
we've got Kate's with us here. She says and she knows a thing or two. Kate says 17,000 years sounds suspect to me. I've heard more like 13 to 14,000 years Southeast United States. And I would say that even 14,000 years for this is still significant. It'll be interesting to see, when they do. I say when. I'm presuming they will pin all these things down and really refine all the interpretations and the data. It'll be interesting to see what does come out of this.
But despite the change in use, the takeaway is the use. This is a very special place, and it's been in use for all of that time. People have been coming and going, coming specifically to this place, and going away and coming back. And the fact that the mounds themselves are really quite recent is neither here nor there. It's still, a continuation. And an honouring of this place. I caught a quote from Tracy Revis, who I think has a lot to do with the pushing through this national parks thing. There's quite a lot. There's a huge political history about how this park this area has been treated. and how the burials have been treated and its history of being incorporated into the national parks scheme. But she said something beautiful. I'll pick this up as a quote. She said, "We believe that those ancestors are still here, their songs are still here, their words are still here, their tears are here, and so we speak to them. We still honour those that have passed on." Take a moment, because it's wonderful to hear such things expressed in veneration of a particular place, in veneration of ancestors. And then it's so easy to transpose that, because we know, whenever we look in prehistory at places that have been venerated and the burial of people, it's so much about ancestors. And to hear that articulated in 2023 or whenever it was, well, it moved me anyway.
Yeah. It moved you. We can tell that moved you.
Yeah. You see, despite, Rupert and I, we always go off on one when people call things a ritual site and all the rest of it. But, it's not about, trying to shove away all this, the spiritual aspect.
I think, in fact, agreeing with what you're saying, but it's the other way around. We always sound as if we're dismissing the ritual, because it's the go-to explanation for everything. And what that does is it means that when a site is found that genuinely probably is ritual, you've taken away all its significance. You've taken away everything that was significant about it, because you say that everything is ritual. It's the badge should be reserved for the things that really do look ritual. It's and in fact, this is something that we'll talk about again a little bit later.
We will. Well, probably towards the end of the show, I think. Yes, there's something else that brings this topic up. Anything else there for you, Anthony, before we move along?
No, I'm just fascinated, and I'm fascinated by the continuous use thing. That's just mind-blowing, to think that there were a community. And this idea that the native tribes in America had around ancestors, addresses the spirituality and addresses the importance of the land to them in terms of the preservation of it, and what colonialism has done to that. Really, really great to see that getting formal recognition. And apparently, if I read right in the article, it has bipartisan support.
Yes.
Which, without getting political, in the US these days is as rare as hen's teeth. So that sounds very positive,
Yes, it is. Because the sense I got was very much that national parks were a bit under attack, during the previous administration, at least. Anyway, as you said, let's not go there, shall we? Okay. Shall we go to Egypt now? Is that a good idea?
Which one are we doing?
Guys and gals?
Which one are we going to first? There's some lovely stuff coming out of Egypt at the moment.
Oh, yeah, there is indeed. Hold on, I can get my thing to work. There we go. 2,000 mummified ram's heads were gifted to long-dead ancient Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II. Wow. If you believe the headlines, more than 2,000 mummified... There they are. More than 2,000 mummified ram's heads have been unearthed at an ancient temple in Egypt. The severed skulls were likely prepared as an offering, prepared as an offering to the Egyptian pharaoh Ramesses II around 1,000 years, here's the kicker, after he died? Question mark. So, we're talking about Abydos, about 430 miles south of Cairo, so that'll be well down the Nile, won't it? So the temple was built in honor of Ramesses II. We're talking 1279 BC, 1213 BC, and the temple was built after the pharaoh's death, does not hold his remains, and was only discovered 150 years ago. What else can we say about that?
I know what going to say. I can predict straight away where this discussion is going to go. So I'm sorry for interrupting, Rupert, but I'm going to put words into your mouth. Rupert is going to ask, are
it's
we
all
sure?
right. It's just
Are we sure
the
archaeologists haven't just stumbled upon some ram abattoir?
well,
Some
in
place where rams
fairness,
were,
in fairness,
slaughtered.
it is in a temple complex. So I'm not going to argue with the fact that because it's the sort of thing the Egyptians would have done. I mean, they were they were lavish in their burials, were they not? So there's no reason to think they wouldn't have been lavish for other things. It was the fact that these 2,000 ram skulls, and they were put in this temple complex 1,000 years after Ramesses died. And they're saying that it's an offering to Ramesses. I just find it a strange assumption that they've made from that point of view. Doesn't take away from the fact that it is an extraordinary thing to have done. I mean, on scale, scale-wise, it smacks of the terracotta army in China. I mean, how often do you see that many things left to honor a dead person, whether it was Ramesses or not, doesn't really matter.
The Erie cranium collection was found by researchers from New York University inside a previously undiscovered ancient storage building in the northern part of the temple. Representatives from Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities wrote in a translated Facebook post. Some of the ram's heads were covered in bandages and been partially preserved, but the majority are now fleshless skulls. The team also found remains of goats, dogs, cows, deer, and an ostrich at the site. All of the animals' remains were likely date to around 1,000 years after Ramesses II ruled Egypt and were likely left as an offering to the much-revered king in the afterlife, ministry representatives wrote. So is this archaeologists or is it ministry representatives? Discuss.
There's some lovely stuff in this complex. There is some lovely stuff. I mean, there are pillars in there as well that depict Osiris, which again, it's another aspect of this that made me wonder if their interpretations are on the mark. Because if you've got pillars with depictions of Osiris, and Osiris was one of the major Egyptian gods, then does it not seem more likely that they're actually in there as an offering to Osiris rather than Ramesses? I don't know. I'm just tossing that in there. It's also it's a nice thing to toss in there that Osiris does happen to be another god that that rose from the dead, and you can see so many of the correlations with Christian.
Well, we can circle around the argument forever and a day, but first off, we've got two articles that speak to the longevity of the importance of a site. 1,000 years is a pretty long time, mind you. We've got Westminster Abbey, so you know what I mean.
Well, but we've got Norman churches all over Britain.
Yeah, for sure.
That we know the churches are that old, but. That's another reason that I question it, because if it was to a god, and okay, I know that you can say the Egyptians thought that the pharaohs were they were living gods, but that's not the same. That when you have mythical gods, Osiris being one, then you can understand how in the same way of our Norman churches, just as an example for the longevity of a site. That you can see why offerings might be continuously made to one of the mythical gods. I can't really see why it would be made in a complex, in a temple complex. Why the that scale of reverence, if you like, would be shown to one of the living kings.
Jez says,
It's
don't forget the
yeah.
pharaoh is Osiris. Now, I don't know my Egyptian culture that well. The pharaoh is Osiris, or embodies Osiris.
Jez is talking about because the pharaohs were the culture said that were the living manifestation of the gods of the god. I didn't know it was specifically Osiris, but even if it is, then my argument would still be that this is something in reference to Osiris, not in reference to Ramesses. Because if you're going to say that it's the living, it's the incarnate God, if you like, then pick your pharaoh. Why would it be Ramesses?
Yeah. The other interesting thing about Osiris is, of course, that he was dismembered. And one wonders if they found 2,000 ram skulls, they presumably did not find any of the rest of the rams' bodies, and one is left wondering, were they being consumed, not to waste anything, while the heads were being deposited as some sort of an offering.
So,
interesting.
Well, the central thing is were they still honouring Ramesses or not? And the counter argument to that is, it's not so much a reverence of places. I was talking about throughout prehistory, there seems to be certainly a memory of ancestors, and so these memories really do persist. We think we can only memorize things because of the written word is there. No, the strain of myth and mythology that contains the names of the ancestors, persists and in memory over millennia. So I don't think it's that much of a problem, but we can't be certain. That's the trouble.
There's an interesting but very, very tenuous link here with Neolithic Ireland, which is a very different animal. But the earliest activity, in terms of burial activity, in the Carrow-Keele complex in County Sligo. Now, this Carrow-Keele complex, in case some of your viewers don't know, this is Neolithic passage tomb architecture, probably dating to around 3,500 BC. The earliest phase of burials were exclusively the antlers of red deers.
Wow.
Before they began to inter human bones in the chambers of those monuments. And there are three distinct phases. There's the antler, the red deer antler, there's cremated human remains, and then a tendency from about 3000 BC onwards. The final phase is more towards uncremated human remains. Now, I don't know what the link might be. When you sent the article earlier and I had a look at it, I thought about this. I haven't been able to completely unravel the significance of red deer antler in terms of why in the earliest phases of those tombs no human remains were placed there, but the antler of red deer were. What or whom were they honouring or commemorating? Now, as I say, it's a very, very tenuous link, but forgive the pun, but I can't get my head around it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's sorry, it's my my computer is asking me to confirm that it's me. Well, Google is anyway.
That was a fine time.
Not now.
Just click the "I am not a robot" button. It's fine.
Yeah.
Identify all pictures with ladders in them, or ram's head, even better.
So anyway, shall we move on? Let's move on.
I mean, it's something that there is so much open to discussion on that, really. But anyway, regardless, it's an extraordinary. What should we call it? It's an extraordinary reverential thing to whoever it was. Whether it was Ramesses or not. 2,000 rounds is just
I concur. Okay.
Mm.
So the next item, I don't think will provide so much of a talking point, but it's a very, very interesting and human find. A prehistoric method for tailoring clothes, maybe written in bone. A punctured bone fragment predates eyed needles in Western Europe by about 15,000 years. There we have the discovery. A punctured animal bone fragment found in Spain, it seems, was a leatherwork punch. So animal bone fragment full of human-made pits hints at how prehistoric people in Western Europe may have crafted clothing. The nearly 4,000-year-old artifact probably served as a punch board for leatherwork, researchers report April 12th in Science Advances. They suggest that the bone fragment rested beneath animal hide while an artisan pricked holes in the material, possibly for seams. If so, it's the earliest known tool of its kind and predates eyed needles in the region by about 15,000 years. Found near Barcelona, it's 11 centimeters long, 28 punctures in total, but 10 of them seem to be aligned and fairly evenly spaced. So, sorry, forgive me. Fascinating one, that. Because as far as I can tell, the article goes on to describe how they did a bit of experimental archaeology and used some leatherworkers' tools to see if they could make the same imprint. It's using a piece of bone as a lath for the puncturing leather.
Well, it was Luc Doyon, the archaeologist from the University of Bordeaux, that he had this idea that's what it was, and then he just happened to visit a cobbler's shop and saw one of the tools that the cobbler was using.
Yeah,
and it was hold on. And the lovely thing about this is that that we've had for something that's been changing over the last decades anyway, that we've been moving away from this notion of people being so primitive. And do you know what? In fact, this just made me think of this. This is in the current
it just happened to have
edition of archaeology. Well, I had it over there because I've been reading it. But there's in Italy, there's a village that they're excavating at the bottom of a lake. It's Lake Bracciano, and one of the things that they've pulled out from the bottom of the lake is.
Just 1 second, Rupert. I'll put you on solo. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
That spindle of thread.
Yeah.
Well, this is Neolithic.
Oh, wow.
Amazing.
And it's just, and if you look at that woven cloth underneath it.
Yeah.
And this is what they've been excavating from. There you go. That's one of the divers working at the site there. So the fact that they've got, the same with Must Farm in Peterborough. That there's again a Neolithic site that they found thread. They found textiles still on the loom. The site, and so it's just anything that points at the sophistication of their clothing, leatherwork, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I think none of us are surprised by this. That when we talk about the sophistication of people's clothing, none of us are surprised. It's just what's so important every time is when they actually find something, when they find evidence to show whatever, That's what makes it so exciting, really. That it's not conjecture anymore. They've shown you that that's what they were doing. I love that.
It's funny, cobbler's tools are not something we have necessarily lying about the house, and every so often you find yourself confronted by that problem. How do I make a hole in a bit of leather? Because leather's pretty darn tough. And without a cobbler's awl, and a proper surface to work on, what could possibly go wrong? It's not not without its health and safety issues, is it?
Put your fingers off. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
This tool then is what we might call a template.
Could be, yeah. It's interesting, as you see in the photograph of it. The such wonderfully even placed holes there. Yeah. So
you're performing a repetitive task. At some point, you're going to do something that just makes it a little bit easier. If that task is menial and repetitive,
Oh, yeah.
And I completely concur with Rupert. There has been a long-standing tendency, which emerges really from the Victorian era antiquarians, that everything that comes from prehistory, is savage, and nobody could possibly have had a brain back then. There's a line in a Dire Straits song that I've been quoting lately. The Dire Straits song is it's called Iron Hand. It's actually written about the miners' strikes in England in the 1980s.
Right. Okay.
The very last line of the song is, "We haven't changed since ancient times," and that rings true every time now. That has rung true on so many fronts.
Yeah.
When we remove the bias and we look at things from the point of view of simple human life and daily function. When you take away the awe around and the whole presumption around ritual. Well, getting out of bed in the morning is a ritual. When you think about it, but down to the simple things in past times, from probably the distant Stone Age until a few centuries ago, the most important things are feeding yourself, keeping yourself warm in these climes, making clothes for yourself, keeping yourself free from injury, etc., performing your bodily functions. Why would we be surprised about somebody who's engaged in this kind of repetitive activity that they wouldn't make something that will make it just that little bit easier for them?
For sure. Yeah.
It's the precursor to modern engineering and design. It's just that they didn't have access to the materials and the technology, and of course, with experience, we've developed all sorts of ridiculously superb technologies. But we all need to do at the bottom line is we all need to do certain things, and those things don't change. If you look at the logboats, for instance, logboat design in Ireland, I'm talking specifically, doesn't change from about 6,000 BC until about two centuries ago, because basically once you get it right, it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love the mundane aspect of some of what you see in archaeology. The mundane, everyday. Do you know what? These were actually ordinary humans. They did not spend their entire lives crowding around in arenas, chanting and sacrificing, humans and animals, and engaging in ritual activity. They actually had to live and do the ordinary, domestic and daily chores of humanity.
Yeah. It'll
one
sound
of
strange.
my favourite stories. Go on.
It'll sound strange coming from the guys who made standing with stones, but monumentalism, the big stones and stuff standing in the landscape, are a complete distraction from what people were actually doing in day to day in their lives. Yeah, totally.
They really are. They really are.
It's great.
One of my favourite stories, though, of you talking about people being people, was a woman, I forget her name, but it was when they were doing a lot of the major work on the Dead Sea Scrolls. and they got a handwriting expert to come and have a look at them. And she looked at one of these scrolls. She spent ages working on it, and at the end of it, she said, "Well, there's 5 people worked on this." She could tell, 5 different hands had worked on it. One of them was left-handed. One of them was particularly stressed, and she was getting all this from the handwriting. And they asked her, when she had finished the whole job, they asked her, what was the biggest thing you've learnt from this, looking at these hands from thousands of years ago. And she said, well, the main thing I've learnt is that we haven't changed a jot in 2,500 years. And it just says it all, doesn't it, really, that no, we haven't. You can go back through as long as you like in the archaeological record, and one of the biggest things that we do is beat each other over the heads with blunt instruments. We're not a nice animal a lot of the time.
Well,
okay. Just for the record, you two are fine.
Oh, bless you, kind sir. I said before that one, it wouldn't produce so much of a talking point. Who knew? There we go. And we nearly went off into the weeds there with, human brutality, etc. I think we should move swiftly along.
Yes.
Going to a place that I don't think we've ever been before. We've been close because we've looked at migrations in the Caribbean before, a long time ago. I can't remember when, but hey. We're off to Puerto Rico. Oldest human remains from Puerto Rico reveal a complex cultural landscape since 1800 BC. I don't think it's a very long article, and there's no. I mean, it's a nice.
No,
and
again, I only pulled it out for the significance of the fact that it equates to our Bronze Age anyway, and it's just that this is a part of the world that we never talk about archaeologically. I mean, we talked about some aspects of the Caribbean a couple of years ago. There was an article, but generally speaking, when you think that Puerto Rico, I mean, that's not a big island. I don't know how it compares to Sardinia, actually.
Good question.
A lot smaller, I think. But it was still it makes a wonderful change, just to illustrate the point that at this point in history, you've got a significant site where people were coming back to inter people. There were burials at this place for about 1,000 years.
Cabo Rojo.
And it's that, really. It's the fact that we've got evidence for a long-term culture functioning in this place over that long period of time, and we don't get to hear about these sorts of things in terms of smaller islands around the world.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. The story of how people got there and travelled along the Caribbean islands is fascinating. Well, it says at the end here, Strontian isotope analysis also indicates that the buried individuals were born in different nearby geographical locales. So the Ortiz site might have held cultural significance as a common mortuary space for various local communities. Again,
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It opens up so many questions.
Important. Yeah. So it's not a long article. There's not a lot of detail to get our teeth into there. But it's just nice to be able to.
No, I mean, if you go to the source material, then it's very dry, and it's it's about the excavations themselves and what have you, which it's interesting if you want to get to the meticulous detail, but it doesn't fundamentally tell you more than that. There's a civilization here. We don't know who they were. But they buried people there over a long period of time. It was a long-standing culture. It's interesting for a small island. I just going off on briefly. My son sent me an article today because he's always looking out for things that I might be interested in. That they're doing some more. They're starting some major excavations on Jersey, and it's something that struck me. We've said it at odd times. We really should have a closer look at the Channel Islands, because the last thing that cropped up for us was when they found the Neanderthal teeth. Did you remember on? I think it was Guernsey,
yes, I do remember.
They found Neanderthal teeth, but it was that, as soon as you get extensions of established cultures cropping up on small, comparatively isolated islands. Cheers. I find that interesting, because it just shows that humans, we do go everywhere, don't we? We spread across the planet like the plague. Anyway, yes, there you go. It was interesting to find a little island with a long-standing culture associated with it.
We shouldn't underestimate. Sorry, Anthony, you go.
All I was going to say on that was, I think it's a victory for our campaign around the word ritual, that it's described as a complex cultural landscape rather than a complex ritual landscape. Because culture implies, again, that ordinary, everyday human activity. Okay, it includes burial, and that is obviously a ritual aspect and a sad aspect. But 90% of our time is spent doing ordinary, living, daily things. So cultural is better than ritual, I think.
Well, it's an interesting aspect here, isn't it? And I think it might be very telling, actually, that the bulk of this work has been done by archaeologists, I believe, from the University of Florida. I can't remember which university, but Florida anyway. And I think you can
University of Miami.
Miami. Okay, I think you can bet your bottom dollar that if that had been done by British archaeologists, then it would be a ritual landscape rather than a cultural one. I might be doing them an injustice, but
Yeah, the fascinating thing for me is, it's something that you can't underestimate, and that's the impact that these kinds of archaeological finds and revelations, however modest it seems in this case, do provide that cultural continuity that people look for. It's good in terms of tourism, and it's good in terms of putting. Not that Puerto Rican needs putting on the map at all, but it helps. And that led me to think, just a few seconds ago, well, that's what we're doing. We're looking for ways to create a narrative around ancestors. Us as the prehistory guys, as archaeologists. Well, we're not archaeologists per se, but you know what I'm saying. Our very seeking out the narrative, the story of how we got here, and all the rest of it is the same impetus, perhaps, that had people venerate their ancestors in the ground, provide them with safe space in the landscape. It's that these narratives are the things that help populations coalesce and grow and be cohesive, and it's that ritual, if you dare I say it, around the thing of creating a narrative, of creating a story, is cultural glue, and it's essential as the food we eat, and to our human nature. That spirituality is as essential as the food we eat to create a rounded society that's functioning. Who knew that was going to come out? But there we go. Are you done?
I'm done. You done?
I'm done. Onward.
Done.
He said, hitting the button, nothing happening. There we go. You probably heard the dull thud. Boom. So, from the further reaches to, a bit of tech now. Bit of tech. Exciting.
Yeah.
Making the invisible visible. good headline. New technique analysing archaeological bones. Now, this is quite a long article, Rupert and Anthony, so I won't dare to begin to read it all.
I think it should only be paraphrased anyway. The significant thing here is that they have these two ladies have come up with a new technique for refining carbon-14 dating and making it a lot less wasteful on bone material, particularly, and it involves it's about the resolution of collagen in the bones, and I've got to be honest, I actually didn't know at all. I just you hear that they take bone and will date the carbon in the bone. I didn't know that it was the collagen that was actually the significant part of this. I had no idea. But the significance of this, I suppose, is that it's actually going to make the whole process easier and more refined. I think that's what's significant about this. Personally, I can't get into the thick of it because it's just outside my remit. But I thought it was worth reporting on.
So it's not about the actual dating itself of carbon-14. It's not a new method of dating. It's enabling carbon-14 dating to be carried out far more efficiently. I think the knock-on effect is not of making it easier. It broadens out the amount of remains, bones, that can be analysed. You're going to get a lot of people going back in the repositories in old bones and being able to say, "Oh, we can date this now because we don't have to destroy it to date it. We can find out how much collagen is in the bones. We know where the collagen is, and be surgical. If that's not slightly punning here." It's surgical about what we the bits that we analyse. I think it'll be quite astonishing the amount of as if there wasn't enough data already.
But they've also said that it's going to make the whole process a lot more cost effective for labs as well, which can only be a good thing. Kate's just asking, can we give you a reference to them? Yes, in fact,
Christina Melagori Serra Talamo at the University of Bologna. I'll just copy and paste that and put it in the comments.
Yeah, well done, because I can't do that. Yes, I can. No, I can't.
Yeah, and also a wrist slap. Can we refer to them as women, please, or even better, as scientists? Fair cop.
Do you know what? Okay, who's commented on that?
Kate.
Kate, thank you, Kate. It's an interesting thing, actually. I don't want to get political, but I'm going to slightly, because one of the things that, it's sometimes you just got to tell it like it is, and I'm happy to be corrected, but it's just you've seen. I was criticised for being woke when I said something about this recently. That we've had so many years of misogyny in science, where women who have played phenomenal roles in discoveries and what have you, and they've almost been airbrushed out of the whole proceedings. And so, for me to say this was done by women, I don't. For me, I think it's something that needs to be said. It's interesting, if any woman says to me that you shouldn't make that distinction, then all right, I'll take that from a woman. I won't take it from a man. But I just think that so often in science, women have been just
okay. So she means don't call us ladies. Don't call us ladies.
Okay, that's my upbringing. My mum would have slapped me if I referred to. I can't help that. But yeah, all right, I'll take that.
Years of corrective.
Yeah, do you know, I did, but from my upbringing, it was always it was a compliment. No, it wasn't a pejorative statement in any way. It's curious what's happened to the English language. It really is. It was not meant in any way disrespectfully.
Anything else to say on that topic? I don't think it provides us any other avenues to go.
No, just really wanted to flag up the fact that I think that whenever there's an advance in laboratory techniques, it needs to be reported. That was it.
Yeah, it just reminds me of the barrage of science that lies behind the science of archaeology, and the fact that any of us, myself included, who write or promote or make video or social media content about prehistory in particular, you're always cognizant of the fact that the only reason you're able to do that is because there's a whole army of scientists behind the scenes who have basically picked apart the story of whatever monument it is you're talking about. Interestingly, and it's a slight aside, but it's quite relevant, Professor O'Kelly, who excavated Newgrange, did not excavate the entire monument. He left a substantial portion of it for future archaeologists, knowing that archaeology was a developing, evolving science, and that in future methods and let's call it technology would be available. And so you know yourself that you only get one chance. The same with the dating of the bones. You only get one chance with archaeology because you destroy the stratigraphy, etc. when you dig. And I'm always very conscious of it. I'm in awe of the specialists and the scientists and their the equipment that they use and the techniques that they use. And I look forward, actually genuinely look forward to the era, which I believe isn't too far in the future, when we will be able to ascertain the date of a monument without actually having to do any major digging at all. We'll be able to send all sorts of probes, very small items of technology, even nanotechnology, down into the soil to collect samples. And that the processes will be, as you say, refined, and they will evolve and speed up, and eventually will make the likes of those 20th century excavations at some of the major Neolithic sites of Europe look quite antiquated, like horrified, look in horror. We would never ever go back to those times. We've got all of this machinery now. And yet your comment about women is very valid. I just think about, for instance, some of the pioneers in the Irish archaeological sphere who perhaps don't get, I mean, for instance, Claire O'Kelly is principally known as the wife of Michael O'Kelly, but actually Claire O'Kelly made a significant contribution to the megalithic art of the Boyne Valley, and was a scientist in her own right, and she sometimes just gets pigeonholed into this. Well, she was the wife of the more famous, the male side of the thing, the partnership,
Yeah, may we second that. It's extraordinary. I think even we sometimes forget or underestimate the amount of sheer hard work, painstaking work that goes into getting the results and the stories that we can tell. Archaeology isn't about a trowel and an area of dirt to dig in. It's the work afterwards, after the stuff has come out of the ground. It's just astonishing. It would do my head in, I think, sifting through 60,000 microliths and putting them in plastic bags and things,
Indeed.
It's that meticulous, day in, day out attention to detail that in the end can only give us the data, the reliable data that we depend upon to be able to relay these stories, for sure. Yeah, nice one. I think we should actually
by the seashore. That's Mary Anning.
Yeah, it's sure, absolutely. You know what? I think it would do us well to actually take that aspect and do something in future, special or something, or a series about the science of archaeology. just to make people a bit more aware of what goes on behind the scenes. Rupert, what do you think?
Yeah, always. I think that there's so much to be said. I mean, let's be honest, it's one of the reasons that we started doing the sorts of articles that we did, was because there is so much stuff that happens all over the world in archaeology that people just do not get to hear. Academics have got access to papers all the time, but outside of that, most people just don't know what's going on. And that's what fired us up in being able to tell people, look, they're doing this and they're doing this. Yeah. And I think particularly the people who are doing the hardcore mind-numbing, sometimes lab work, that, I think we should shout their names loudly.
Very good. And with that, we shall move on to a gruesome, slightly gruesome thing. Certainly an aspect of humans being beastly to each other. Let's go with this. Let's go Palace pits. Yeah, we're back in Egypt again. Up the delta, though, this time. Palace pits with severed hands studied in ancient Egyptian site. It's a dry title, but tells a story, I guess. Yeah. As I say, up there in the delta, not down on the Nile proper, not near Cairo, but yeah. Sorry, excuse me. Damn. First physical evidence of an ancient practice previously known only from iconographic and literary sources. 12 to 18 right hands buried beneath pits in an ancient Egyptian palace has been analysed by a team of researchers led by Julia Gresky of the German Archaeological Institute in Berlin. That's Lee's University, isn't it? Lee Clare's University. Anyway, that's by the by. The researchers report the details of the grisly find and offer some insight into why a dozen hands were deposited this way in their paper, First Osteological Evidence of Severed Hands in Ancient Egypt, published in the journal Scientific Reports. The excavations cite the hands were discovered in dates to about 1640 to 1530 BC in the forecourt of Hyksos Palace at Avaris in northeastern Egypt. What else did you manage to glean from this, Rupert?
Well, it's interesting on a lot of levels that it appears that these were, they say in a pit, but it was in a shallow pit in an entranceway. So these were meant to be seen. So if it was somebody coming into an audience with the king kind of thing, it's like, well, yes. Don't forget that that's what happens to people we don't like, sort of thing. Interesting, they've said 12 to 18 because they haven't been able to tell, a lot of the bones had got fairly jumbled. So, they were doing the count really to see how many hands were actually involved. And the minimum is 12, the maximum is 18. Only one of them, and they've. There is a way, they say, that you can tell whether it's a man or a woman's hand. There's a ratio between a couple of the fingers that apparently is relevant. So one of them was a woman's hand, only one. Another interesting thing here is that they're very, very neatly severed, just the hand. There's no wrist, there's no forearm, it's just the hand. And so they've actually made the comment that they don't know whether this was, they were actually cut off that accurately, amputated, if you like, that accurately, or if an arm would have been more, let's say, freely lopped off, and it was tidied up afterwards before it was put in the pit.
I didn't know that the hand is the it's the hardest part of the body to discern sex from.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a guess. They reckon, for the most part, I think the indication is the ring finger sometimes in males is a tad longer, but that's all they've got to go on. And by that discernment, they managed to work out that they're mostly male, and there's probably one female. But it's a very dodgy thing to determine what the sex of an individual was from the bones of their hand.
I thought another interesting aspect, actually, of the bone analysis was that they were trying to get the ages of these people, and they reckoned they were
Yes.
that they were just probably in the middle somewhere. But the youngest was age that could have been is 14, and the upper range, it was certainly below 60. Okay, that's a fair bit of latitude, but.
Do you know the interesting thing from this is pointing out, although we've sort of gone to Egypt, as you saw from the map, it's up there in the. Oh, sorry, it would help if I showed it. It's up there in the delta, but apparently at this time the Egyptian empire was contracting somewhat. So it mentions what the Hyksos kings, which were much more likely to be a more local organizations, if you see what I mean, much more under the influence of the Levant and Western Asia than Egypt itself. So they probably were more a law unto themselves, rather than this being an Egyptian cultural practice or martial practice or whatever like that. It's just important to make that distinction.
I was interested in the very last paragraph of that article, it talks about the possibility that it was to do with taking a hand from an enemy. Which is a traditional practice in warfare. And the funny thing is, there is actually a little bit of a parallel for this in Irish mythology, and that pertains to the notion that the king couldn't be blemished. And of course, a very, very well-known story because it influences the Star Wars narrative of Luke Skywalker getting his arm chopped off, and that is Nuadu, who gets his arm chopped off and has to actually abdicate the throne because he's blemished. And he later gets a silver arm. The first mention in mythology of prosthetics, he gets a silver arm fixed on, and then eventually gets covered in flesh, and he's restored to the throne. But one of the things that the kings did in medieval Ireland, when there was this internecine conflict with neighbouring tribal clans, was that the king, one way to guarantee that your neighbour wasn't going to give you trouble in future was to maim or kill him and his sons. Now, there's not, I don't think, a recorded practice around chopping their arms off per se. It's usually actually stabbing their eyes out is a very good way of guaranteeing that they'll never take the throne. And that is mentioned in the Irish annals. But the notion that they may have displayed those hands, I mean, I think Rupert was suggesting there that these were clearly meant to be on display. That it was a warning that if you had an audience with the chief or the king or whatever, that the warning clearly was, well, just be careful what you say and do, or you could end up losing your hand. And of course, sure, we don't need to go any further with that, except to say you can't do much without your hands. I also wonder, very briefly, I heard a story on Irish radio, and it was from a gentleman who had done a doctor who'd done a lot of charity medical work in Africa. And he told me a story about where a father had actually burnt his daughter's hands as punishment for something. I'm not sure if he cut them off, but the point of the story was that they needed to find prosthetic hands for this girl because she had lost her hands. And it was her own father who'd punished her. There are aspects of, and this doesn't necessarily relate purely to Africa, this comes out of Ireland as well. There are aspects of the past that are quite savage and barbaric, and you'd nearly be surprised who is inflicting the punishment. That they might be closer to you than you think. I'd say that's the simplest explanation for it. What else is there?
So Elaine says, is it all the right hand? Yes, it is. And isn't that the sword hand? Yes. If you're right-handed, yes. But most often
probably
is.
reinforces the point,
yeah. Fair cop. You were saying just that last couple of paragraphs actually is worth, says, while there is little evidence of hand severing previous to the time period of the pits, it does surface in the iconographic accounts 50 to 80 years later. The authors suggest that if this is indeed the origin of the activity in Egypt, it may have originated in the communities from which the Hyksos leadership originated. As the cultures mixed, the practice may have caught on. While the Hyksos Avaris hands may have been part of a ceremony at the palace, taking a hand from an enemy became a traditional practice in warfare in the dynasties that followed, according to iconographic records. This is the first reported discovery of physical evidence of the practice. Okay.
Aren't there places in the world today still where the punishment for stealing something is to get your hand chopped off?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, not much more to say about that, I guess.
Hands in a pit. Well, it's we
like a bit of gruesomeness, I suppose.
You can't help it.
To mull over.
The amount of horror movies and everything else we watch, there is something morbid about us. We love the gruesome. There's something about it. We like to remind ourselves how horrible we are sometimes. This did actually bring up, and particularly with what you were just saying there, Anthony, that one of the things that we did an article on a couple of years ago about prosthetic hand, that it was called a prosthetic hand. It's a bronze hand that was dug up in, crikey, Mike, was it Germany?
I think it was, but I couldn't. Yeah, I
can't remember off the top of my head. And it was actually included in the British Museum World Stonehenge exhibition.
Oh yes, it was.
And what was so astonishing about seeing that bronze hand was seeing it in the flesh, if you'll forgive me for saying that. I was shocked at how small it was.
Yes, it's tiny, isn't it?
Was it a child's hand or maybe a woman's hand? It was small, and having only seen the photographs before, you got the impression that it was just a hand, bronze hand, but tiny little thing.
Before we move on, I'm going to do something that we don't very often do, and I've been reminded and thinking it's something because we don't work this. We don't get to be the prehistory guys on fresh air. Something we probably don't do often enough, and promote the methods by which we manage to do this. So without further ado, it's not like going to a word from our sponsor, but it kind of is. So I'll put this together. Just nearly 3 minutes of your time. Stick with it, and see you on the other side. So I'm sure you know that Rupert and I couldn't do what we do here if it wasn't for our good friends who support us through Patreon. What you probably don't know, however, is that as a Patreon member, as of this moment, there are 474 items of exclusive content available to you. The thing is, our Patreon page has been going since 2018, and that's some time before the YouTube channel began to take off in 2020 when our film Standing with Stones became so popular. So as you can imagine, there's quite an archive of content that's built up over that time. That archive becomes available to you as soon as you become a Patreon member for just $5 a month. You get 157 exclusive podcasts, 131 live show recordings, 122 ad-free videos, and loads more behind the scenes and other content. And of course, those numbers will continue to grow, seeing as we produce an exclusive weekly podcast called The Monday Moot, just for our Patreons. And every month you'll be invited to a Zoom conference call with us, where we share what's going on behind the scenes and engage in a free-ranging conversation with you about the topics we cover. Plus, there's always stuff we're sharing from behind the scenes anyway, so our patrons feel on the inside track of what the Prehistory guys are up to. And talking of patrons, at the moment we have 278 of them. They're a friendly bunch, an amazingly supportive community, and we'd like to invite you to join them. Links in the description below and up in the corner if you're watching the recording of the show. On the other hand, if the idea of a subscription isn't up your street, we have a fantastic project starting this year which we'd like your help with. It's called Göbekli Tepe to Stonehenge, and it'll be a series of films which will tell the whole story of the Neolithic, the story of the first farmers, the people who came west out of Mesopotamia and the Fertile Crescent, and the story of their descendants, the ones who eventually were inspired and audacious enough to express themselves in stone, the ones who became the megalith builders. Right now, we're really close to reaching our funding goal for episode 1. People have been wonderfully generous, but we just need a little bit more of a nudge to get us our budget for filming later this year. So please have a look at our Buy Me a Coffee page, where there's a short promo film about the project and more details about our plans and ambitions. Thank you so much for your support, whatever way you choose to express it, whether by subscribing to the channel, giving us a like, or indeed through one of our funding options. It's all so very much appreciated, and we look forward to getting to know you better as the channel continues to grow. Thanks so much for listening. On with the show. Thank you, Michael. That's a good thing to have said and expressed. Anyway, as I say, thank you for attention. Anything to say before we move on, Rupert? Anthony?
Well said, that man, is all I can say. Yeah, I mean, we are shockingly bad, actually, at at saying, you know what, we do need your money. It's true. Yeah, our Patreon crew are just they are our lifeblood. Yeah. That's
cool. Enough said. Shall we move to Paris now? I mean, you know what I mean, don't you? Shall we go to Paris now?
Let's go to Paris.
Rightio. And it is ancient necropolis unearthed next to a busy Paris train station. Just meters from a busy train station in the heart of Paris, scientists have uncovered 50 graves in an ancient necropolis which offer a rare glimpse of life into the French capital's precursor, Lutetia, nearly 2,000 years ago. I didn't know there was a place, that is pre-Roman and Roman, I suppose, which kind of is getting us into sort of if we reported about something in England from around 2,000 years ago, we'd be well worried about veering into historical era. So
you would. I know I was grazing the boundaries here, but
yes.
There were a few things about this. I mean, you're talking about cities like that, though. That I don't think any of us should ever forget that any of the major cities, unless it's a new town, any of the major cities are just extensions of the most ancient settlements of all. They've just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. So people have been living in Paris for, there's plenty of extremely old long barrows in the Paris Basin.
Yeah, absolutely. Lutetia we're talking about here, which is
Lutetia. Yeah, well, yes. So they have gone back to Roman era for this, and I know that's grazing the boundaries for us. But the reason that I liked this so much is that there are lots of necropoli and catacombs underneath Paris. There are staggering amounts of bones most of it's from things like the French Revolution. It's comparatively recent history. this is the first time that they've actually found, right in the middle of Paris, something significant from 2,000 years ago. It was that really. That's what really made this exciting for me, and it's so lucky that they found this. They've actually excavated. It was the site itself. An aspect of the site itself was found some years ago, and it was covered over again because they'd taken out everything that they thought was relevant,
valuable,
or worth having.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's always the bling. And then they'd covered it over again and forgotten all about it. And it's because new developments are going on. It's all the good archaeology these days is found because developments and building work is going to happen. And so they had another excavation just to make sure, and found a part of this necropolis, a complete section that they didn't even know existed before.
Talking about archaeology that happens because things are being developed. It's that in France you've got the National Institute of Preventive Archaeological Research, which is particularly oriented around stuff that's about to be ploughed over or developed over. And what have they got? A sort of flying squad that.
It does sound like that, doesn't it?
Does sound like that. And how would you word that? It looks like INRAP, but obviously it's
INRAP, the Institut National de Recherche Archéologique Préventive.
That's the one. Yes.
And it's I just find it's typically French that they call it preventative archaeology. Rather than protective or whatever else. It's no, we're going to stop you from doing something. It's very French.
But you see, the trouble is, this is after talking about the wonderful technical expertise that archaeologists work through in order to give us the dates and everything. It's cheating here because a member of the team said they were very happy to have found a skeleton with a coin in its mouth, allowing them to date the burial to the 2nd century. Yes, that's cheating.
It would be so nice if that happened more often, wouldn't it?
Anyway, some great photos.
We were never going to be able to date them through other methods. Acclaimed blue.
Oh, the ferryman of the Hades, of course.
Don't pay the ferryman.
You got to pay the ferryman, and all that. We could go off on another one like that. Anyway, always good to see photographs of archaeologists hard at work in the high vis. I've never had to wear a high vis when I've been on an archaeological dig. I don't know if I'll get my dig leaders into trouble there. But
I find the whole thing, what have we become really, that when you look at society today and all these things that we are obliged to do, health and safety, and you see people working out in the open air at a dig and they've got to wear a hard hat. You think, what is Chicken Little? Is the sky going to fall on your head? Because I don't know what else could.
I would say the high vis is probably because the archaeological site in this case is also a building site.
That is very true. I think commercial archaeologists are certainly obliged to when they're on site. Academic digs probably not so much. Don't know. Don't quote me on that, please. Okay, let's talk about something else, shall we? Oh, this is great. We're going to Israel now Israeli archaeologists find 6,000-year-old metal fishhook, and it's for sharks. World's oldest known metal fishhook has been found in Ashkelon. The Israel Antiquities Authority has announced, and it's a monster. Yet again, a prized object has been found during infrastructure work, this time for a whole new neighbourhood. Made of copper, dated to about 6,000 years ago, 6.5 centimetres long, 4 centimetres wide. This hook wasn't used for anchovies. At a size like this, This baby would have been deployed to catch sharks or some other megafish. I tell you what, this guy or lady, what am I doing? This guy or gal, this guy or gal, daytime job isn't writing scientific papers. Let me take a wild guess there. To catch sharks or some other during the Chalcolithic period. Say the antiquities authorities Yael Abadi Rice and Daniel Varga, co-directors of the dig. So Abadi Rice calls the find luck, pure luck. The hook wasn't discovered at some postulated ancient pier all by itself, but in an ancient residential area, which aided in its dating. All the finds were of the same period, the Chalcolithic, she explains. Well, there it is. Not a lot of sense of scale there. I think there's a picture with Abadi Rice holding it. That gives a better idea of the size of the thing. So obviously the assumption is, given the size, that it's for a shark or something like that. I think that may be a bit of a reach. I suspect tuna or something like that, because tuna can be flipping huge. Can't they?
They can. I'm not sure how much tuna you find off the coast of Israel.
Well, there is that. I don't know.
I'm not sure. But either way, big fish. That's a big hook. Got to be said.
But it's worth
I think I read somewhere else that just because we're talking about fish, that the first evidence for fly fishing is from Israel.
Oh, really?
I can't give you a date on it.
Oh, look, there's a link. Actually, you're right. There's a link actually in the article there. Fly fishing invented 13,000 years ago.
There you go.
On the banks of the River Jordan.
Yeah.
Oh, terrific stuff. I mean, the thing is, it's worth reiterating in case wondering why people are getting excited about it. Is that this is copper? Copper just disappears. In a matter of, I don't know, how long does it take to dissolve into the earth if it's not preserved in some way? So that's when she says luck, pure luck. That's it. The likelihood of finding a slender piece of metal made out of copper from all this time ago is extraordinary. So it's worth reiterating. The first ever evidence of a metal fish hook. Now, for people that often survived by...
Sorry, Kevin's just said, could it be used for punching holes in leather? It's such a nice thing to say, Kev, because I must admit that when I looked at it, and I thought, well, okay, they're big, but I can see a number of uses for hook. And I'm not for a moment suggesting it wasn't for catching big fish, but you have to ask the question, don't you?
Yeah. Elaine says there was no tuna over there, so,
Yeah.
Nice guess, but no cigar.
No, I suspected as much, but there's still a lot of big fish, and you do get sharks. So
okay, fair enough. But apparently
the say how they dated it. Sorry, I just maybe I missed that in the reading of it. But how did they date it?
I think the context of the dwelling that it was found in.
Yeah. You can't date the thing itself, can you? Sorry, this is what I seem distracted about. My
your cat.
It's the wrong way. There you go. Yeah, and he's trying.
He looks very nonplussed.
Nonplussed.
He wants fuss. That's what it is.
Okay. The earliest, I didn't realise this. There are fish hooks that are earlier, far, far, far earlier, but they're made out of shells.
They're not copper.
They're definitely not copper. No. I don't know if there's anything else to be. Sorry, excuse me. Blowing on the microphone there. Hope not blowing your eardrums out, those of you that are using earphones. Yeah, I don't think there's anything more there, Rupert.
Oh, there's lots of questions, but I mean,
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
expense of making this a 4-hour broadcast, what did they
Go
use
for it.
to
Go for it.
tackle? What was the fishing rod like? Where were the sharks caught? Are they caught out on the sea on boats? What was
Yeah.
put on the hook to bait the shark? I mean, there are tons of questions, but
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, we could devote a whole episode to that, I think.
That's right. I'm reminded of the piece we did in one of our specials. It was a prehistory flash back in the day of the first evidence of a shark attack, and it was in Japan.
Yes, indeed.
Wow.
Yeah. The guy had been buried, but on examination of the bones, it seems that they were commensurate with the result of a shark attack. I can't remember. I think it was Neolithic, though. Was it Neolithic? Or was it going?
Yes, it was.
It was pretty
Yes,
old,
it was.
wasn't it?
But it's. I think they would have been on a line, not on a rod.
Oh, Anthony's lost it.
I know you're struggling with the cat. It's quite obvious.
I am. It's claws. It's claws. And when I chuck him on the floor, he just gets back up again. And it's because my wife is down. He's usually getting fussed somewhere. No, I've just put a magazine over my leg so he can't stick his claws in my thigh. I apologise.
Well done on keeping a straight face.
Sorry, you were trying to say something, Rupert, when your cat so
Yeah,
rudely interrupted you.
Not making any sense at all. No, I was just saying that a hook that size, that wouldn't be on a rod of any description, would it? That would be on a line, and yeah, I would think off a boat of some sort.
Ben Lawrence, what do you like? Maybe it was a prop from Anchovy and Cleopatra.
Very good. Very good. I'm going to screen grab that because I'll lose it otherwise.
Okay. What do you? Yeah. What, do you want to screen grab it now or get it off the recording, Rupert?
No, I've screen grabbed it because
sweet.
It'll just be.
Can we get a fourth window and a microphone for the cat? You haven't got another camera there, can you? You can't.
Yeah, and I usually have my door shut so he can't come in. But what he often does is you can't see. I have a window just literally 2 feet in front of me here, and he just sits outside tapping on the window. Let me in, and he won't shut up. So
anyway, without too much more, we've come to the last article we've got here, Rupert, which is astonishing. Yes. Let us go there right now. We're going to Saudi Arabia, uncovering the ritual. Here we go.
The
blue touch paper.
I will just say, yes. Before we go into this, because this is our kind of pet subject, really, but there is another one that you've managed to miss. But I'm actually very happy not to mention it and put it into next month's show because it's about the Rosetta Stone, and I'd be quite happy to talk about that.
I'm so sorry. I don't know. I'd missed that one. Pushing it for time.
No, don't worry about it.
For 2 hours.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, next month I will include another article about the Rosetta Stone because it's wonderful what's come out of that one. Sorry, Michael, just needed to say that. Do carry on.
Well, it's probably just as well. Anyway, uncovering the ritual past of an ancient stone monument in Saudi Arabia. Where to begin, Rupert? I think... Anyway, a comprehensive analysis of an archaeological site in Saudi Arabia sheds new light on mustatils, stone monuments from the late Neolithic period thought to have been used for ritual purposes. Melissa Kennedy of the University of Western Australia, Perth, and colleagues, in conjunction with the Royal Commission for the AIUAA, present these findings in the open access journal PLOS ONE on March the 15th, 2023. Without diving into the article too much, Rupert, can you tell us what Mustatil is, or has been discerned to be, or just in...
my dog has joined me here. I can't slag you about your cat anymore.
God, order.
Welcome to the news. Yes, welcome to the news strand, the prehistory pets.
Oh dear. Mustatils. They first discovered mustatils. Oh crikey! Back in the 1970s, probably. Basically, as we have said repeatedly, it's just the go-to thing is they're called ritual sites. Ritual this, they've even been called cult sites. But what became increasingly apparent was that they actually relate to animal husbandry in
what
I
was trying
ways.
To get out though was more technically what they are.
What they are, they are they're various shapes. They're actually another word for them is kites. There's kites, and that
I'm giving you a quizzical look.
Yes. Mustatils and desert kites are same-use structures, and they come in various shapes. The mustatils themselves are generally rectangular, with a low wall. We don't really know how high the wall would have been because we're talking about 5,000-year-old, 6,000-year-old things here. But various shapes, and they do remarkably resemble... There you go. They do remarkably resemble Curtis monuments that you'd find in Britain. In
generally speaking, they're about up to 600 meters long.
Yes, but they can be as short as 20. The shortest known in Saudi Arabia is 20. So clearly. When people talk about ritual this and ritual that, you think, well, if it's the same shape and one's 20 meters long and one's 600 meters, you can't really be saying that that's the same ritual, can you? Maybe. But what they have found increasingly is animal remains, sometimes in large numbers. They say ritual because they always do. They say ritual because they have, in a few instances, found people buried within them as well. But I don't think we should ever lose sight of the fact that we have so many instances globally, actually, where when somebody dies, they are buried in their home. Still happens today in Indonesia. Or their place of work, yes. It still happens today in Indonesia.
Hello, Martin. Martin's just joined us from...
Oh, good grief. Martin, nice to see you. Yes, so... but the other thing is that their interpretation... I don't want to be unkind, but in this one in particular they've been talking about here, in fact, I think... Mike, are you showing pictures of it? No.
You're talking about...
Yeah,
which picture do you want? Okay.
So, well, the thing is that there's a particular one that they're talking about here. Lots of antelope remains found in it, and they called it ritual because some of the bones were put into a separate chamber there. Now, the thing is that you have to ask the question of, well, if you're actually using this for animal husbandry, possibly animal traps, because they do resemble animal traps that are known from various parts throughout Saudi Arabia, That is that just somewhere that if you've dispatched an animal and done your butchery, and where are you going to put the bones? It could just be the rubbish tip.
That was my first thought. Yeah, I was just thinking that when you were. Yeah. This idea of ritual, I mean, isn't it just more about the practicalities of life? And, isn't this just a cattle enclosure, or a trap, as Rupert says?
Yeah.
Researchers' analysis included identification of 260 fragments of animal skulls and horns, primarily from domestic cattle, as well as from domestic goats, gazelle, and small ruminants. Nearly all of these remains were clustered around a large upright stone interpreted to be a betel. Radiocarbon dating suggests that the betel is one of the oldest identified in the Arabian Peninsula, and the bones provide some of the earliest evidence for domestication of cattle in the northern Arabia.
A betel is just a ritual stone,
and it says it's been interpreted as a betel. Which has come first? Is you've got a betel and there's animal bones around it, or because the animal bones are piled around this stone, you've decided it's must have some significance, and then therefore you're calling it a betel. Which way around is it? I find this article somewhat, regressive, actually, because I'm sure I've had papers on Mustatil before that have said, they're for cattle management and domestic cattle management. And it's a known thing. Certainly, as far as the kites are concerned, they know that it's for the management of migrating animals and the domestication.
There's still no consensus, though. You're still going to get the people that want to bang the ritual drum are always going to bang the ritual drum, and I think. In fact, it's something that we've commented on before, and kind of going back to something you said not long ago, Anthony, that that ritual, having breakfast is a ritual, and so when you actually put that argument forward, when you say you're always calling things ritual, and they go, oh yes, but anything that you repeat is a ritual. And it annoys me that that's the comeback, because we all know damn well that that's not what they meant. Whenever they use the word ritual, they mean religious or or whatever. But they will use that as the argument, as a get-out clause, as soon as you kind of call them to task on it, take them to task on it. It's. Regardless of the fact that they call this, there was even one that was excavated where they were calling it a death cult because there were so many remains within it. And it's like, just stop it. Just tell us what you found and stop making rubbish up. Sometimes they just can't help themselves.
So an excavated abattoir would be evidence of a death cult, would it? Okay, fine.
It's still, for us, it's really fascinating to see, when some of these animal traps that they look remarkably like typical curses. Where you've
this
got,
one in particular, I just went. Well, that's the end of a curses.
You've got so you've got a raised wall here, as opposed to we'd have an earthen bank with a cursus. But down the sides, you get periodic gaps in the wall where you could, you chase animals into it, herd them into it, and then have them trapped within.
Well, something I didn't know. Nice. The earlier Scottish cursus were defined by timber posts, not so much the bank and ditch. Interestingly.
And not just timber posts, but some of them had fences as well. In fact, there's one in particular on Arran where they actually found they excavated evidence for the fencing that was between the timber posts.
Oh, I'd forgotten that. Yes.
So big posts and then fence.
Yes.
And I really like that because, sorry, getting off on one, but you look at the the excavations that never get discussed on Salisbury Plain, and particularly, all around Stonehenge, the amount of fencing, where they've got these small, not big timber posts, but just small metal. God, Soskin, what did you just say? Small timber posts, you like fence posts, just going for miles. You think, fences. It's just ritual.
Here's another thing I didn't realise until recently, is that in the early Neolithic, sort of first quadrant of the Neolithic in Britain, quite soon after farming arrived in Britain, it failed. It fell away. People reverted. I don't know, what it was, that the soils became tired very quickly, or what have you. But after the introduction of farming, it reverted to mostly cattle farming, to livestock, domestic cattle. And coincidentally, at that time, that's when you see cursuses emerging in the landscape. It's when they started changing back from arable farming to cattle farming, mostly, going back and hunting. And you think, why haven't people they know this, why haven't, and causewayed enclosures as well emerged at the same time. And thinking, maybe those two have got something to do with each other. There are a few curses in the Bruneboyne, aren't there, Anthony?
Yeah, there are. And in fact, there's a feature that was I think it was discovered during the Instar project, published in 2010, which is not like the other cursi. Is cursi the plural of cursuses?
It's cursus.
No,
actually,
it's cursus.
the plural.
Yes.
Oh, that's boring. Okay,
it's like sheep.
I'll just make up an Irishness and I'll call them cursuses. So there's the parallel banks are a thing, but there's one not in the townland of Douth. Well, it's close to Douth, where the banks appear to converge.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there are some archaeologists who suggested that was some sort of a cattle droveway, or maybe
nice.
a pig droveway, and it's like, so you're left thinking, right? Okay, what does that not perhaps apply to the other cursuses at Bruneboyne? Interestingly, Michael, you were talking about the fact that there are gaps in the walls. I was thinking about the banqueting hall at the Hill of Tara, known in Ireland as Teach Me Chorta, which you both have seen. But
that was an eye opener. Walking up the
with
the Great Hall.
The regular gaps in the bank. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm no structural engineer, I don't think that was ever a banqueting hall, because there's no stone there, so it has to be made of timber, and the timbers would need to have been very, very substantial. But there are comparisons there with this. And again, Rupert, I know this is something you've been talking about for a long time. When we get away from the whole idea that people spent 80% of their lives engaged in some sort of austere and arcane ritual activity, what were they doing? Well, actually, they were maybe minding their cattle before they slaughtered them and ate them, or milked them, or whatever. Maybe, just maybe, there's something just much more prosaic going on. And I think those are 7,000. Did I read that? 7,000 years old. Is that right? The oldest.
The Mustatils, yes.
Of the Mustatils?
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's late Neolithic in that part of the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know how far the desert kites date back. I think maybe earlier. I don't.
Some of them are earlier than that. I can't. In fact, I'm not going to say, because I can't remember exactly, so I'm not going to make it up. But I'm pretty sure that they predate. In some cases, they predate the Mustatils.
Okay.
Sorry, tumbleweed moment. Dear. Yeah.
Well, it is.
But that's. Sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, to be fair, it is past 10 o'clock, and we and the good folk that have been with us all this time.
It is.
There is a limit.
I'm constantly amazed that you guys stick with us all the time. Thank you. Thank you very much. But it's it's always nice to gather this stuff together from all around the world. It's great fun.
Yeah. Do you know there's an opportunity here to finish off the evening with a bit of whimsy, Rupert? Because Stuart Grant, has said a site of special sacred delusion.
Yes.
Do you know what an SSD is, Anthony?
An SSSD. That was Alice Roberts.
Yes.
And we had a laugh about that, didn't we? Yeah.
How long ago did we interview Alice Roberts? Wasn't that long ago, actually. Last year, wasn't it? But an SSSD coined the phrase. Or was it her husband, who's an archaeologist, that coined the phrase? I think
I really want to meet her husband because he's as big a cynic as we are. In fact, you know what? Yeah,
what did he say about the frontlet of Starcar frontlet?
Yes, it was Alice. Alice was doing some work on Starcar, and for those of you that don't know, Starcar is a Mesolithic site in north of England. Hugely important what they found there, and one of the most significant things was this red deer part of the skull. So you've got part of the skull with the horns, although the horns are gone, but with two holes, and and it's like you'd wear this as a mask. That probably is what it's for. But Alice went home and said to her husband, who is an archaeologist. And she said to her husband, "Come on, what else could you use this for?" And he looks different. He said, "Coat hook." You'd hang that on the wall and you'd put your coat
on it. Yeah.
And we looked at it and we thought, yeah, fair play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
that was very funny.
But sites of sacred what is it?
Yeah.
Sites of
yes.
Delusion.
Special
I
sacred
can't remember which
delusion.
Lord she said it did. Yeah. Because
which
we have,
is,
obviously.
Which was
You
great
said
to hear from.
Here, Rupert. That brings us all the way back to Carrow Keel. So, in fact, the first phase at Carrow Keel is not the ritual deposition of animal bones. It is just the simple discarding of coat hooks that are no longer useful.
Coat hook depository. That's what it is.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it was so encouraging to hear what
I think we should
Alice...
probably qualify, because there might be some people, I don't know if it's the same in America, but in the UK we have a designation of an SSSI, which is a site of special scientific interest.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's why Alice was saying all this ritual this and ritual that. She coined she said, no, it's an SSSD, site of
special sacred delusion,
or whatever it was. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was the joke anyway.
Yeah. It was thrilling to learn that she was on board, with our angle on these things. A lot of the time she found, what we had to say very interesting, and so that's how that came about. Anyway, find it out. An interview with Alice Roberts somewhere down in the Prehistory guys YouTube timeline. Indeed,
and an extended version of it on Patreon as well.
That is true. Nice one, getting that in. I thought there was a special, but you're absolutely right. There's a special extended version for Patreon members. Excellent.
Yeah.
With that, I think it's time to wrap up now. Say goodbye for the evening. It's been
Thanks for
fun,
joining
guys.
us, folks. Yes.
Thank you for joining us, Anthony, as ever. And, well,
Pleasure.
not exactly keeping us on the straight and narrow, but certainly.
It's always good to see you. Yes. Yeah, thanks, folks. Well, it is late, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it is. We can
Well done,
talk,
sticking on.
believe it or not. Yeah. Despite not knowing much, we don't know much. We don't know much. It's just all stones. You know, we made Standing with Stones. We thought it was all going to be simple. It's just, you know, rocks in fields. You know, point a camera at that story. Good. You know, move on.
There's another
Who
one.
knew? Who knew?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Maybe they'll give us a special doctorate at some point. You know.
Just watch the outtakes, and then you'll get an impression of just what was involved.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Bless you, folks. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for your likes and your subscriptions and everything. And anybody that's ever, you know, thrown any money at us any time. It's great to have you with us, and I hope, you know, it's lovely to see that you enjoy these natters and these shows. Very encouraging to us all, and has us believe that we might be doing something right. With that, I will say ta-ra for now, ta-ra for me, ta-ra from
me. Thanks, folks.
Yeah.
Cheers, the right way.
Yeah, indeed. Let's see if I can find...
Wrong way. Stop it.
Embarrassing. Bye.
See you. Bye.